I welcome all of you that are interested in understanding this particular concept in maths. Let's look at the question. The question says, simplify 2 plus 3i over negative 3 plus 2i. So that is the only information given in the question. We have to simplify this fraction. So that means we have to understand what does the word simplify means in this question. Okay, so I can say simplify means to make something less complicated. Okay, so for now this question have two imaginary parts. One is 3i and the other one is 2i. So that means we have to simplify it from two imaginary parts to at least just one imaginary part. And that is what I am going to do now. And in order to simplify fractions like this, we have to rationalize the denominator. That means we have to multiply by the conjugate of the denominator. Okay, but in the denominator, there are two parts there, the real part and the imaginary part. The conjugate of what we have to multiply? The conjugate of the imaginary part. So that means in our denominator, we have negative 3 plus 2i. So what is the conjugate of negative 3 plus 2i? And that will be negative 3 minus 2i. Be careful here. Some of you will change both signs. This negative 3, they will change it to positive. That will be wrong. The conjugate for the imaginary part only. So in the original question, it was negative 3 plus 2i. So we are just concentrating on the imaginary part. The imaginary part is positive 2i. So that means the conjugate of positive 2i is negative 2i. Negative 3 will remain as negative 3. So we will multiply with the conjugate of the denominator. So that will be negative 3 minus 2i over negative 3 minus 2i. Then we solve further. When we are multiplying fractions, we can just multiply the numerator together and multiply the denominator together. So I'm solving the numerator first. So 2 plus 3i multiplied by negative 3 minus 2i will be 2 plus 3i inside the bracket multiply by negative 3 minus 2i. If bracket is there, no operation sign, that means they are multiplied together. Divided by negative 3 plus 2i multiply by negative 3 minus 2i. Okay, so from there, then we will have to multiply like this, expanding the brackets. 2 will be multiplied to both the real part and the imaginary part. 3i also will be multiplied to both. Okay, so let's solve the numerator part first. So according to the arrows here, it will be 2 times negative 3, which will be negative 6. 2 times negative 2i, that will be negative 4i. Remember the minus in front of 2i. We'll multiply it together with the 2 here, and that is how we get negative 4i. And we bring the plus sign here. So it's a positive 3i. Positive 3i multiplied by negative 3. So positive and negative, when we multiply together, the negative will dominate. So that means positive 3i times negative 3 is a negative 3, negative 9i. Negative 3 times positive 3i is negative 9i. And then the last arrow, positive 3i multiplied by negative 2i will be negative 6i squared, because I and I, we have to add their powers. Their powers are both 1. That is how we get the 2 there for I squared. So that is for the numerator. For the denominator, if we observe it, if you observe it carefully, you can see there's a plus and a minus there, plus and a minus, and negative 3 is same there, negative 3 on the other side, 2i and 2i, 1 plus 1 minus. So that is something that we call the difference of squares. So what does difference of squares says? Difference of squares says a squared minus b squared equals a plus b and a minus b. Okay, so for our denominator, can clearly see it looks something like this. A plus and a minus is there, and the value of a is same, and the value of b is also same. So that means we just have to identify what is our a and what is our b in this denominator, and we can make it like this according to our difference of squares rule. So from there we can say our a is negative 3, because in place of a, negative 3 is there. And our b is 2i. B is 2i. Where does the minus sign go to? The minus sign according to our rule is there, and the plus sign according to our rule is also there. Okay, a negative 3, b 2i. A negative 3, b 2i. Okay, so when we have identified our a and b, that will be easy for us to just put in the difference of squares form, a squared minus b squared. So that means negative 3 squared minus 2i squared. Then we solve it further. So from here it will be negative 6. The like terms there, I can see one like term there, both I, negative 4 and negative 9. So that means we can add them straight. Negative 4i minus 9i, that will be minus 13i, and the minus 6. And in complex numbers, the famous rule we know is I squared is equal to negative 1. And we will be using this in this question because I squared is there. So in place of I squared, I will substitute negative 1 there. Okay, so in our denominator, negative 3 squared will give us positive 9. The minus from the formula. Be careful here, the square will go to both. So that means 2 squared will be 4 and I to the power 2 is I squared. Okay, so from here solving further, negative 6 minus 13i, negative 6 times negative 1, negative 6 times negative 1 will give us positive 6, and positive 6 we can also write it like this, the plus sign, positive 6, and that plus sign will come here, plus 6 divided by 9 minus 4, another I squared there, I squared is equal to negative 1. Okay, same thing here, negative 4 times negative 1, according to Bedmar's rule we have to multiply first, and that is why I'm multiplying first. Negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. Positive 4 can also be written like this, a plus sign, and that plus sign there will come here. So negative 6 minus 13i plus 6 divided by 9 plus 4. Okay, so there I can see a negative 6 and a positive 6. We can just cancel the 6. Or if you will put them together, negative 6 plus 6 will be 0. So it's the same thing when we cancel it. Okay, so what are we left with? We are left with negative 13i on the numerator, and in the denominator 9 plus 4, that will give us 13. Okay, so there is a 13 in the numerator and a 13 in the denominator. We can cancel that, and what is left? Only negative I is left. So that means our solution for this question is just negative I, and we have simplified it from 2 real parts, 2 imaginary parts, to just 1 imaginary part as our final answer. So that means we have simplified this question.